Hello and welcome to the first episode of How to Think Properly, an analysis of news and random stuff that is poorly made, poorly presented, poorly researched, and then I will hopefully pick apart some of the elements that make it like that and point it out. So, yeah. The first one we're going to watch is Broken Foundation U.S. Power Grid, Nation's Biggest Danger by Russia Today. Now, Russia Today, it was a news source that I used to like because I think when they were more early on, I don't know, they seemed kind of interesting. They presented news from all over the world. It seemed less biased than American news. They were also critical of America, which I wanted a perspective that was critical of the United States. That's why I also watched Al Jazeera, although Al Jazeera is still good. But Russia Today has seemed to been getting like worse and worse. They're getting more sensational, and they're seeming more just like American news, and it's getting kind of shitty. So let's watch this report they did.
Next, crumbling roads and bridges and a flickering electricity grid. America's infrastructure is creaking these days, and it's becoming a big problem. Even though Mother Nature's played a hand in wrecking supplies recently, the government is earmarking money for almost anything other than energy, as Manipur and I found out.
Over the past decade, America has spent hundreds of billions in the name of national security. Wars, military intervention, fighting terrorists, and hunting online hackers. Meantime, getting much less attention is a domestic danger lurking in and lighting up every corner of the country.
Okay, so first of all, the first 40 seconds of this entire broadcast is completely sensational, right? They use words like, lurking dangers and creaking, or whatever he said, creaking power systems. We built our infrastructure up not that long ago. I mean, it's been, they build it over time and they do upgrades and stuff like that. It would be irrational, it wouldn't be logical for the United States to continually just upgrade our power system every 10 years or something, because it'd be super ridiculously expensive. Let's keep watching.
The U.S. power grid. In recent months, federal officials have warned that America's electric cables, substations, and transformers are not sufficiently secured and are vulnerable to attack by anyone with a weapon and some basic know-how.
Okay, so that's also really dumb. Everything besides high security, government buildings or something is open to attack. You could take a gun or make a homemade bomb and literally attack anything. So that whole statement is just fucking retarded because it doesn't actually say anything.
Experts say the energy grid is also outdated and antiquated, unable to prevent outages from cascading. In October, Superstorm Sandy hit 24 states, causing some...
So then they bring up Hurricane Sandy, and they use that as an example for how our power grid system is shitty, but that doesn't really make sense because Sandy was like a, kind of like a once in a century kind of an event. So using that as like an example for a bad power system doesn't really make sense.
$1 billion in damage. More than 4.5 million people lost power, and New York was left crippled by massive floods, leaving much of the city, including half of the Big Apple, plunged into darkness.
To be expected.
2 months after the storm, the streets of downtown Manhattan remain clogged with tubes, wires, and heavy equipment because dozens of the city's iconic skyscrapers still rely on generators for power.
Things like
Not
this,
overly surprising considering the amount of damage that was done. It was like a ridiculous amount of money that was put into it, and like thousands of miles of coastline, which I think they say in here.
2 months with major buildings not capable of being used. That does not occur in Hong Kong, in Shanghai, in Amsterdam, because they have built systems designed to deal with the reality of nature. So it is this cutting corners and failing to invest that is imposing enormous damage on the American economy.
When it comes to America's electricity, 90% of the grid is privately owned by utility companies.
So like he uses a few cities as examples that have systems that can deal with. I don't know where he gets that info from, but that seems unlikely. If they got hit with a hurricane really, really bad like that, I would imagine that they'd face similar damages. I mean, 2 months really isn't that long to try and get an entire coastline back up and running.
Companies beholden to investors.
Then they also say that as like implying that it's really negative, that our electrical power grid should be owned entirely by the government. But as we've seen, governments are generally very terrible at running businesses. They're very inefficient. So having our power grid run by commercial enterprises isn't really that bad of an idea, as long as there's regulation and as long as there's the government is like a watchdog for it and make sure it's fair and all that. So I don't. They use that as like a negative, but it's really not.
The energy sector in the United States is largely a privately operated enterprise. Therefore, only by regulation from the federal government, amended by regulation from state and local governments, will it be possible to pull a grid together that is safe. There are many reasons, not only financial, but also policy reasons, where really changes have to come about if we want to change our safety and our livelihood.
None of that really makes any sense. If the government is completely in charge of our power grid, it's never going to get updated unless it totally breaks, because that's how they do things. If it's run by private corporations, it's also not going to get upgraded right away because they don't need to, but they will upgrade it sooner because they want to make more money, so they'll either expand it or they'll make more efficient ways of running it because they want to save money while making the same amount and stuff.
Changes are
reasons where really changes have to come about.
And he talks about the safety of the system, but the United States is clearly aware of infrastructure dangers. We've seen all over the world already the danger of like people hacking into those mechanical programming systems and like messing with it. I think there's actually been some instances of things happening in the U.S. already. So it's not like this is unknown. That's why the United States has spent a ton in cybersecurity. And I mean, I don't know what they want you to do. Like, honestly, are we supposed to have troops at every power station? Like, a person could just run in there and blow something up, but you can't stop everything. So I don't know what he's talking about.
The changes aren't just limited to the grid. Engineers have warned that many of America's bridges, roads, dams, levees, and power plants are in danger of crumbling if not repaired.
This applies to like probably everywhere in the world, so again, useless.
Especially as sea levels continue rising.
Even one
that will be a problem for everywhere, including the U.S.
Nothing compared to what Hurricane Sandy did across the Northeast. 1,000 miles of destruction. It was a very, very big natural event. And, to have Congress not funding the repair of the basic infrastructure is just staggeringly short-sighted.
So that guy probably doesn't watch the news because he's clearly not aware of our budget issues.
A broken foundation that risks the chance of becoming the nation's biggest homegrown danger.
I mean, at this point, with the budget constraints that are going on and fighting over like how we should allocate money and stuff, they're only going to put money into things that are like absolutely necessary. The power grid works. We have power. If it didn't work, they would put money into it. But because it works, there's no reason to just go and fix it right now. There's no reason to upgrade it to like, 2012, 2013 technologies. It would cost us like hundreds and hundreds of billions, if not trillions of dollars across the nation to do that. It wouldn't make any sense. It would just put us further into debt that we don't need. So yeah. Overall, this video, it brings up a good issue. This is something that people should be aware of. We should know that our livelihood depends on, the electrical power, the power grid, our water and sewer systems, any sort of infrastructure like that, roads. we should be aware that, you know, those are things that do need to have focus and blah blah blah. But this is just like American media, where they just sensationalize it and say, and you know, try and get you kind of scared. Or, well, I mean, this is RT, so they're probably trying to like tell the rest of the world that, haha, look at America, they suck. But totally sensational. I mean, I don't know. Did anyone really see these problems? So, okay, so that covers this first episode of how to think properly, or how to look at things more better. Thank you very much for watching, and see you next time.